Welcome to the OC Politics Show, keeping politics bipartisan, local, and on the level.
Welcome to the OC Politics Show. I'm Joe Matthews. And sitting next to me is my lovely daughter, Karina Matthews.
Hi.
Let's see. We're going to do a little father-daughter.
It's okay.
Father-daughter
My
exercise.
room is blue.
Exercise in Politician 101 and teaching your young adult children well. What's their first time election being 18 years old? Are you 18?
Yes, I am. I'm going to be a first-time voter.
First-time voter. Let's get to know Karina Matthews. She's a Gen Z member. And where are they at? And what's their political views? Let's crack open the sample ballot and the voter information guide. And together we can proceed to understand process and make good choices for her future and for the country's future. And now for the political whip around.
We're going to be discussing the state of political affairs for Gen Z.
State launches money laundering investigation to Andrew Doe and OC election party.
And then we're going to be discussing leadership and elected officials to consider this election.
And then we have 5 state propositions to review. All right, so we're going to get started. Karina, let's get to know you first, because you're kind of like why we're all here.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm here because Todd's not here today.
That's true. Todd's with family this weekend, so we thought we'd pull out the big guns for his replacement, my daughter. But we're going to talk about politics because politics for an 18-year-old is kind of like not usually the thing that happens around the house a lot these days. It's not considered that important, I guess. And my daughter and I have always shared a nice conversation every 2 to 4 years that come around. Who are you going to vote for? Why are you going to vote for? And now she can finally vote for her. So it's kind of like what if, right? The what ifs are over. Now it's time to dig in and actually learn what we're supposed to do to make those choices. So tell me politically, how do you kind of lean?
I would consider myself to lean pretty left, but I take things on a case-to-case basis, I guess is the best way to explain it. I definitely for bodily autonomy for women, rights for the LGBTQ plus community, very much centered on the rights for the people. I don't consider myself a very economic leaning voter or economically leading politically, I guess. I know a couple of people my age at school who would consider the economy more. And I think, I would consider myself more left than anything.
So can you talk in general terms about Gen Z? Can you give me some, you told me kind of how it works with Biden last night. I thought that was kind of interesting.
You'll get a lot of people in Gen Z who and this is based on my own observation, I can't speak for all Gen Z, but I know the ones that I have met are either super right or super left. I have not met
super right or super left. I think that's going to be the new cool word to say.
Yeah. And we're very much centered around social media. I know we would hate to be considered glued to our phones, but really we are connected. I think we are the way that we are because we are so intertwined with social media. That's how we are able to share information so fast. That's how we are able to be so, politically united, left or right, because there's these communities on social media who are able to freely express how they identify and how they're voting and how they're thinking, and people are able to pick things and kind of go with it. And so I would say, and just like when you were telling me that, you wanted me to join on this podcast, as soon as you started talking to me about start doing research on the proposition, start talking about who you want in office, what do you look for in a leader, on my free page on even TikTok, it shows stuff that I lean towards politically, like people my own age talking about what you should do, what are they standing on these issues, videos that come up on Biden talking about, we like Bernie, but Bernie's not on the ballot, so you have to pick Biden. Like all these things, it's like as a social movement, that's how we lean, I guess is how I could say that. If that makes sense.
So you are the class of 2020. You have a very distinct, when we look back in our history books, we're going to look back at 2020 as this interesting year. So tell me about your experiences with that.
We all thought we were going for an extra week of spring break. We were going to have a 3-day weekend, and then we were like, oh, cool, we're getting the next 2 weeks off. And then now it's October, and my brothers are doing online school, and I did a drive-by graduation. I think that it was definitely, at least for me, I spent a lot of time working my first year, like my first semester of my senior year. I started a new job. I was applying for schools. I didn't get to go to that many dances. I spent a lot of my time working. And
working where?
I'm a barista at Starbucks, and I just got promoted to shift lead. They're starting to put me on that path. So
Yahoo.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dad.
Good. That's my girl.
Thank you. So I've been a barista at Starbucks. I've been doing that alongside school, and I think with the whole class of 2020 thing, it puts us into perspective of like, can we do school at home? Like, is this something that we want to focus on? Is being too intertwined with like technology a thing? Like there's all these things that we question about like the class of 2020. Like, are we respecting guidelines and all that? Like there's all these things where it's like overwhelmingly in like different directions. You know what I mean?
How did 2020 affect your college ambitions?
I would say it greatly affected them. I got into a 4-year university. I got into George Mason University. I got into their honors program for forensic science. And then I got a lot of scholarship money, but unfortunately with COVID, the price of going to school there raised, and they wanted me to go back in the fall, and I didn't want to go there with the virus being as rampant as ever. I didn't feel comfortable going to school there, and then I didn't feel comfortable forking out a lot of money every year. So I figured.
Did you feel safe?
No, I didn't even feel safe. Like at work, you get these people who don't think they need to put on a mask, and I was like, I know on the East Coast it was in a worse state, or it was getting bad, and I knew that going to school over there was going to be problematic for my health, because I already have underlying health problems that I was like, I want to get those taken care of before I head off. And I chose to go with a more financially stable option, and I opted for a Starbucks college program where they would pay for my bachelor's degree, and I would just stick with the company until I got that done.
Right.
So
nice. So do you think it's going to be a big turnout for Gen Zers?
I definitely like, I'm sorry, like, what do you mean by turnout? Like
turnout for the election. Like, do you think that your average Gen Zer is going to vote, or do you think they'll sit one out?
I think I think people are more motivated than ever with the way that 2020 has unfolded so far. I mean, it feels like an eternity. Like if I brought up the Australia fires, you wouldn't think that happened this year. That was early, like January, February. This year has gone on for so long, and they understand that it's declining in the way that they want their life to like be. They understand that this is not how they want their country to be ran. So I'm 100% sure the turnout is going to be way bigger than we've expected. What's
your kind of observation of the big race, the Biden versus Trump race? What's your observations? I know I snuck that one on you.
Yeah, I was like, "Are you?" When we were doing stuff for this, he was like, "We're just going to be doing stuff on a local level. Like, don't worry about the president." And I was like, "Okay."
Well, I'm cool. Curious. Like,
no, I'm like able to talk about it, but I know like. I think I can speak for a lot of Gen Z members that a lot of us wanted Bernie, and a lot of us understand that Biden isn't our first choice, but we understand it's our only choice to get a certain person out of office. And so I think Biden has fallen onto us, and like he's our best hope, like the Star Wars, like you're our last hope. Like that's all we have to kind of get the country in a like leaning towards a way that we want it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give you like a little. I'm going to show you a little bit about what we do here at OC Politics. I'm going to do a story, and we call these stories watch lists, right? Thank you. So this is we'll be talking about this guy later on, but state authorities have launched a money laundering investigation into Orange County Supervisor Andrew Doe, focusing on whether he secretly and potentially legally steered over $22,000 last month to his own campaign through the Orange County Republican Party. Doe's campaign treasurer, Lisa Ray, also is accused in the complaint of violating state law as part of the alleged money laundering. She has declined to comment and has been when reached by phone. Now, the complaint centers on Doe's transfer last month of $24,000 from an account he controls that has no contribution limits, known as the Central Committee account, into the Orange County Republican Party's campaign account. Less than 2 weeks later, the party transferred $22,326 to Doe's supervisor campaign. In short, this was an illegal transfer of funds, with the Orange County Republican Party acting as the intermediary in a money laundering scheme perpetrated by Supervisor Andrew Doe. Investigators with the California Fair Political Practices Commission opened an investigation into Doe's campaign and the Orange County Republican Party, according to a letter responding to the complaint. So, speaking of leaders, let's go on to the leadership's positions that we were looking at over in our sample ballot. And the first one is the county supervisor. Now, do you know what a county supervisor does? Most people don't.
They're responsible for establishing policy and guiding the administrative functions of the county departments, and they serve as like the governing body over the county.
So there's about 5 of them, and they do it by politician, and they divide up Orange County into 5 beautiful lands, and there's 5 people that represent them. Remember when I used to work for a supervisor, he used to, I remember it was Don Kanabe, and he used to say, if you can say from A to Z, the county probably has something about it. So they have a lot of influence. They have influence over the police, the fire department, well, some police and some fire departments, like the Orange County Sheriff's, the fire authority, the Parks and Recreation, the beaches. There's a lot that they are in charge of. So it's a big, important decision, and these supervisor positions don't come up very often. So where did you go with it?
So I know that you were going to be talking about Andrew Doe, and so I was like, why not talk about Sergio Contreras? So I understand that, because this is such a big position in California government and such a local level, I understand that, it's important to find someone who accurately represents an act, if like has a good cause, like I guess is what the words I'm looking for. And like you had asked me earlier to talk about like what you look for in a leader. Is like, is this what you want to talk about right now? It's like, and it's someone who's really representing their people and sticking up for them and advocating for them at a level that they can't express themselves. And so, and me being more part of like an arts background, you share a lot of community with your people. And I feel like I really prioritize that. And not saying that I'm voting for Sergio Contreras, but I really like that he's focusing on giving back to the community, and that he is, let me check my notes. He wants to beef up public safety, so the skyrocketing cost of housing and increase access to healthcare. Those are all things that I value and I would like to see get better. So that's my take on that, my overview.
All right. How about the mayor of us? Because we live in Santa Ana, our sample ballot says we can only vote for our city, and we got Santa Ana. So this is the first time, and we say this all the time, it's the first time in like 2 decades that there's been a new mayor.
Yeah, because Polito.
Polito,
I went to school with Polito's daughter. We had English class together. It was really funny.
was she nice?
Yeah, she was cool. I think she's an EMT now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's going to school for that. She's always wanted to be a nurse.
So anyway, Polito has been in charge of the city since 1994. So this is the first time after term limits that it's opened up. So this is a huge, big deal, especially when there's 3 other city council districts opening up. I mean, we have council Ward 3 that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But what was your process for the mayor?
I think alongside other first-time voters is, we look at the ballot, and a lot of us don't have time to do extensive research. And I'm going to be honest, if you hadn't told me that I was going to do this podcast, I probably wouldn't have looked so intensely at the propositions and our candidates and everything, just because I know that some people think of elections at a national level and not at a local, smaller level. And so
that's OC politics.
Yeah. Well, when people think the election, they think, oh, only the president and your representative, not your mayor, not this. They don't think that's as important. Most people think they can just free ball it. Because I've definitely talked to people who think that it doesn't matter. That's the thing. But I looked at Jose Solorio because just looking over the ballot, I wanted to pick someone who, one, I knew would be a contraster or someone that you weren't talking about, just so we can get some variety. And because I looked in that he was previously a council member and he was also a father. And so I look for people in the community, people who represent my demographic, people who are very family oriented, people who consider people like us when they're making decisions. And so that was what I looked for. That's why I was drawn to him. And then I started doing more research, and I had seen he had a history of being a council member. He comes from immigrant workers. He's educated. That's something I'm very drawn to, is someone who's diverse and someone who is able to last so long in politics and be successful in a way. I'm trying to think of the word to be. I'm losing my train of thought.
He has more essence. Than most. Yeah, I mean, Solorio does have a lot of political experience. He's had many jobs within the political world. He's a very nice man. Right now, Santa Ana is kind of facing a controversy with their police union and with their they just did a recall election on one of the city council members. So whoever's coming in is going to face a very powerful police union. Mm-hmm. So Solorio has, I'm hoping he has enough juice to stand up to the police unions, and we can get a fair share of what that money will go to as far as other community programs. I'm not a defund the police kind of a person, but sometimes reprioritizing police funds doesn't hurt anybody either.
That's what defunding the police is that's what they mean.
Right, but they've made defunding the police such a nasty.
It's just like when feminists used to be a bad word, is because people didn't fully understand that it meant equality for both instead of women are superior. That's what they mean by defunding the police, is diverting money into so that police aren't 100% in charge of drug problems and in charge of childcare.
Why didn't you pick a woman for mayor? I mean, I like Claudia Alvarez.
Because you were going to talk about Alvarez, and so I was
okay. So
because I didn't want to pick someone.
I mean, she is a prosecutor, and
I'm not saying I'm voting for Jose Solorio. I just wanted to talk about someone who is different than who you wanted to talk about, and so.
Aren't you sweet?
I don't want it to be change it up a bit.
Okay.
But,
well, Alvarez is good. I want to know that someone's a little strong that could stand up to the police, and the prosecutor is over the police in the hierarchy, of at least that's what I learned from Law and Order.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to our Ward 3, our city council.
Who do I have? think I have Danny Vega.
You have Danny Vega.
Yeah. I'm drawn to people who are, and this is not saying that I'm going to vote for them 100%. This is just like someone I wanted to talk about. Is I'm drawn, and I think a lot of Gen Zs can speak on my behalf as well, that we like people who are educated. We like people who have a science background. We like people who believe in science, especially now more than ever, taking science into consideration into laws, especially with COVID, following CDC guidelines, knowing the science behind things. I think we prioritize that. And Danny Vega is an electrical engineer, and that's a STEM field. And yeah, that's something I was drawn to right away, is that his history and his science work.
I went with Jessie Lopez.
Which,
She's a Bernie person.
which I like too, but I wanted to pick someone who was
pick
different.
someone different. So, Jessie Lopez, good luck to you. All right, let's change the subject. Let's look at these propositions now. There's no way we're gonna have time to do all 20.
We can speed run it. We'll
Let's
just
speed run it. Yeah. How many propositions for 14?
We have just 5, right? We have 15, 17, 18, 22, and 25.
Okay, so
Proposition 15 has to do with taxes. It's increasing funding for public schools, community colleges, and local government services by changing tax assessment of commercial and industrial property, which means that there's going to be higher property taxes on businesses to fund the community.
yeah, let's.
I just summarized.
You did. But I was going to say let's focus. The opposition is trying to make it that you are going to get taxed for your property taxes, which is not the case. This is strictly on
industrial
and commercial.
commercial.
Anything over $3 million, they're going to tax. So it's trying to get it equalized between residential and the commercial, because commercial seems to kind of get away with not paying as much taxes, and the schools need their stuff, man. They need some help. So it's going to raise between 6.5 and $11 billion a year. So I think schools need it. We're down in the bottom 25% as far as funding for schools. It's kind of sad. And schools in California, like schools that your mom or schools that your grandma went to, were awesome, and then they've just slowly kind of deteriorated as time has gone by.
Yeah.
So 15 is there anything else you want to say about 15?
I mean, I had underlying questions of like, how will this affect small businesses? Can small businesses qualify to be put on a higher tax? Is now a good time to start raising the cost of living for California? Because once you start taxing those businesses, the cost of gas, utilities, healthcare, childcare are going to go up. And not saying that I lean economically, but is that something that's good for this economy right now during a virus, when most people are reliant on unemployment, or their current employment is a little bit unstable?
Well, we're trying to get a stimulus package out of Washington, D.C. to help everybody else out. So this might be the only way education will get any kind of money this way. Yeah. So
I think, and I'm all for education. I know that's something like a lot of my friends opted to do community college and public school too, because it's easier. You're getting an education for a good price, and education is an education.
Okay. So yes on 15? Okay, let's look at 17. Restores the right to vote after completion of prison term. Legislative constitutional amendment restores voting rights upon completion of prison term to persons who have been disqualified from voting while serving a prison term. Fiscal impact, annual county costs likely in the hundreds of thousands of dollars statewide for voter registration and ballot materials. One-time state costs likely to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for voter registration cards and systems. So, what do you think about that?
I think if you're registered to vote and you're serving your term, I think
you serve your term and then the term's over.
Yeah.
Right? And you get the right.
You get the right back to vote. But then there's I think there's like if you're already going to finish. I think I can't remember if I read that in. If it's like you're about to finish or you're really close to, they're allowed to register to vote. Or right? Either way, I think that the right to vote encouraged them to re-enter society and kind of get back into the like groove of life. Like I think that's something like once you give a person back their right to vote, it's one of those things that helps them feel like, you know what, like I'm no longer considered a criminal. I'm no longer considered a disappointment. Like I'm allowed to voice my opinion because the right to vote is the right to participate and feel included in your government.
Yeah.
And so, but I know that some people who are against this are, you know, they think that losing their right to vote is part of the punishment, but that doesn't make sense because a person is a person. Like they still have, their views are still valid.
Yeah. Well, the Republicans and the Democrats support Prop 17. More than 2/3 of the state legislature, Republicans, Democrats supported asking California voters to consider 17. So there's a lot of scare tactics that we're giving murderous people that right,
Yeah.
but that's a small percentage, I think.
And that's a lot of people who like will probably never see the light of day too.
Yeah,
like,
they're still in jail, I hope. Right?
Yeah, like a lot of people, most of those people aren't going to get out for a long time.
All right, 17's done.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at 18. California Constitution currently permits individuals who are at least 18 years old on the date of the election to vote in the election. It amends constitutional to permit 17-year-olds who will be at least 18 years old and otherwise eligible to vote for the time of the next general election to vote in any primary or special election that occurs before the next general election. So, I mean, it's kind of like hard getting an 18-year-old person to open up a ballot book and start researching. What do you really think your 17-year-old brother is going to do the same thing?
I think, like I was talking before, we were talking about, you know, before when we were going over everything that we said, I think if we're going to start changing the voting age, I think we should change our like school system, like not like entirely, but I'm saying like the curriculum is in when you're 18 and you're a senior in high school, you take your government class and you take your econ class, and those align with the values and the policies and everything that you need to know at a basic level about what you're voting for. You learn, like I didn't know what an oligarchy was until my senior year of high school, and that's because I wasn't taught that. I didn't know what fiscal policy was until I started my senior year. So I think if you're going to lower the voting age, you need to give them the resources to learn in a class environment, because that's when you're able to see what affects certain people, how are people already being affected by current laws in place, and what you need to learn about, like about your local government and higher levels of government.
So Gen Z, they can handle another year?
I would say so. If they're educated, and then like I think it's a little bit wrong to only give certain 17-year-olds, not certain 17-year-olds, but like if they're not learning that as a whole, I think it's unfair to give them the right to vote, and not everybody knows what they're talking about.
And they're very specific. It's like going back from the general election to the primary is your window of opportunity as a 17-year-old to participate. So I think the younger you get the voter, the better.
I mean, that's good and all. Like, I understand that. I think it's great that they're allowing more people to be involved in public policy. But I also understand that a good voter is an educated voter. And if you're not also giving them the resources outside of the ballot, the sample ballot, that it's a bit of a disadvantage to just leave it all on them, even with the age requirements.
Okay. We got two more here. Let's go with the 22. You know a little bit about that, and so do I. Classifies drivers for app-based transportation, rideshare, the delivery companies as independent contractors, not employers, unless company sets drivers' hours, requires acceptance of specific ride and delivery requests, or restricts working for other companies. Independent contractors are not covered by various state employment laws, including minimum wage, overtime, unemployment insurance, and workers' compensation. So, you said what?
As someone I just became a DoorDash driver to pick up extra cash. I'm not doing it all the time. It's not something I rely on 100%. But I do understand that if you're voting for this proposition, you're keeping the right to be flexible with your employment to the company, because it is something that you're not going through an extensive interview process. You're not jumping through a lot of hurdles to work with these companies. But I also understand that if you're working for a company, I work part-time for Starbucks and I still get really good benefits, and that's just part-time. And I think that if you're working with Lyft, they should be able to provide you with basic means of living, and insurance is one of those things that now is important more than ever.
Well, this is because of a state law, AB 5, that made the difference, right? And brought out, and who's paying for this? The proposition.
Yeah, a lot of companies
all the advertising
come together. They funded 105 or yeah,
Who
105
though?
million. All the app-based companies.
all the Uber, Lyft,
DoorDash,
Lyft, they all got together and
they formed this coalition to campaign.
And it seems like they're trying to put one over on us. It's if you pass it, they'll get health insurance stipend, they'll get rest policy, earnings minimums, and it's really what they do already.
Yeah, that's already things that they put in place. I think they're trying to advertise to people, and I definitely know they're trying to advertise people who aren't working DoorDash anyway, because people who actually work those jobs know that these are things already put in place that are already actively being used by the drivers.
All right, so we are a yes or no?
That's something I think I still need to kind of mull over. I think there's more research I need to do.
Excellent answer.
Thank you. I don't want to speak too soon and then sound like an idiot, I think that there's more research to be done. Just earlier, we were confused about whether it applied to small businesses, even though it says app-based companies. There are still more things that need to be looked over and understood, because there are also hidden clauses where they're not even though you're considered an independent contractor, you're still not making your own wages on a rolling basis, and that's not something that's typical of independent contractor. So there's plenty of things to be looked at closer in detail that can probably sway my opinion.
Excellent. All right, let's go to our last one, Proposition 25. It's a referendum on the law that replaced money bail with a system based on public safety and flight risk. A yes vote approves and a no vote rejects law replacing money bail with system based on public safety and flight risk. Financial impacts increased costs, possibly in the mid hundreds of millions of dollars annually for a new process for release from jail prior to trial, and decreased county jail costs, possibly in the tens of hundreds of millions of dollars annually. So I'm arrested. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and boom, $5,000 bail. I don't have $5,000 bail. I can barely get $1,000 bail. I go to the county jail, and I kind of sit there until it's time for my trial. And that could be a year, could be 3 months. But because I can't afford that little bit of money, I'm stuck there. Now, if someone's richer than I am that has $5,000 just dripping out of his wallet, he is released from jail, and he gets to be getting a tan waiting for his trial date. So that's the system that we have right now. That's the kind of the dichotomy of it. So,
and it's frustrating to see how closely tied justice is to money, which is it makes it unfair in the slightest bit, because it should be if you have committed or have fallen into the same circumstances, and one person just happens to have a little bit more money than you, it's unfair that one has to spend time in jail until their court date where the other doesn't have to.
It is. So there's a system, but it's done by the judges. There's like an electronic system to kind of.
Yeah, there's a this was written by a Sacramento politician to take away every Californian's option to post bail, and it replaces this right with a new discriminatory. Well, it's saying it's discriminatory system of computer generated profiling. Discriminatory can be taken either way. That's just what the.
But
the
ultimately,
booklet
it's the judge that says you're going to stay right where you are, or you may go, sir. See you in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'd like to thank Karina Matthews
Thank you for having me.
for being our special guest, and I'll just tell Todd that he doesn't need to bother to show up to work.
Yeah, I can drive you to your podcast.
There
all the
you go.
time.
All right. So we want to thank you all guys for joining us today on our father-daughter exploration into the political world. I want to thank my co-host Brian Sitch. Brian and Stitch Radio. And not to forget to follow us on our favorite podcast player, Facebook, YouTube. And remember, get involved, hold your elected officials accountable, and vote local. Until next week, stay safe and stay aware.